Joe can give you all the history on exactly his background, but they are both, I believe, what is the word I'm looking for? Certified judges?
No, just been doing poultry for eons.
Okay, so they've been doing poultry for eons. They travel, they've been at the state fair helping, they've been here in Bush County helping. They are both from Brevard County. They live over in Christmas. So I will let them tell you their background, and then they're going to start our show. Sounds like a show today. Go
All
for
right.
it, Joe. It's all you.
That's us.
You're on.
We're on. All right. I'm Joe Walter. This is my wife and cohort, Jennifer Walter, and we work pretty much as a team, both Central Florida Fair, Brevard County Fair, Florida State Fair. We judge showmanship up here once or twice in Volusia County. I have a master's degree in poultry science, which I don't know if that does us a whole lot of good, but I did graduate from the University of Florida.
Can't hardly hear, like right here.
Okay, I will try to speak up. Usually
go.
that's not a problem for me. Let me do this. Might be easier now. I wear a hearing aid, so when I have my hearing aid on, I hear me a lot louder than what I am. So, all right. I am Joe Walter, and this is my wife, Jennifer. We work as a team throughout the state, giving classes such as this. We're on the Poultry Committee for the Central Florida Fair and the Youth Poultry Committee for the Florida State Fair and the Open Poultry Show for the State Fair in Tampa. So I do have a master's degree in poultry science, and I've tried to teach Jennifer a little bit about poultry in the last 25 or 30 years.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Just a little bit.
What we're going to try to do today is to start you out on what the expectation is to get your birds ready for a show, and then how to show your birds once you get to the show. I see age-wise, there's this pretty young group of children, so hopefully this will be really educational to you. Some of the older children may have been subjected to this before, and so we apologize for being repetitive on that. So the first thing we're going to do is, how do we get ready for the show? Well, you work with your bird, and we'll cover that more later when we do the showmanship after we do the grooming part. You work with your bird, you get comfortable with them, get the bird comfortable with you. Then, a few days before the show, 3 to 5 days, say, before the show, you bathe your birds. How many people here have bathed their birds before? All right, some of you have.
Good job.
All right. And because Jennifer's usually the one who's not in the office working, she gets the chance to bathe what birds our kids have shown over the years. So she will take the leadership in teaching you how to bathe your birds and how to prep your birds. And the preparation for the birds is not only washing the birds, it's trimming the beaks, trimming the toenails, getting them ready to actually do the show. And so we brought 3 different birds along with us today. 2 of them are bantams, and 1 is a standard bird. And when I say standard bird, you all realize that you have bantam chickens and you have standard chickens. All right. There's a little bit of variation in size here. The bird on your left, which is a white leghorn, is not a purebred white leghorn. It is a commercial bird. And why do we make emphasis on that? Well, most of our shows, we're talking about purebred birds. Okay? A purebred bird like a white leghorn would be twice the size as that commercial white leghorn. Be twice that size. Now, in your fancy shows, which is what most of our shows are today, this bird would not fare well at all. It's too small. It does not have the characteristics that a purebred white leghorn would have. What it does have, it has the ability to eat less feed and produce more eggs than a purebred white leghorn. So when you take a bird to the show, if it's a commercial type bird like this, don't expect it to do real well. Not in most shows anyway. Now, some shows have a commercial or production class, and that bird would do well in a commercial production class. The other thing I want to point out to you is that bird has a funny looking comb, doesn't it? It's called a dubbed comb. Like most of your white leghorns, they're single comb. That bird, the comb has been cut. It's called dubbed. Commercially, they did that particularly in areas that are high mosquito populations. Well, why would that be? What do mosquitoes carry for your chickens? Fowl pox. And so it's one reason to dub your chickens is to reduce that big white single comb that normally she would have, to keep down the mosquito population, or the transfer of fowl pox to your birds through mosquitoes. In some of your Bantam birds, like Old English, all your Old English male birds must be dubbed in order to show. So that's something to be aware of. The other two birds you see there, from your right to left, are both Bantam birds, but you can see there's a big variation in size in Bantam birds. But both of those are Bantams. For those just starting in showing that are young, we highly suggest that you look at a Bantam bird to start your showmanship with. One of the reasons is that a lot of shows, they'll say, okay, everybody that's in a junior class in showmanship, come out, and they'll put you in a line, or even in chairs or whatever. You got to hold those birds. Well, if you're 32nd person in showmanship and you've got a big bird, it gets pretty tiring. So we certainly don't suggest you start that way. We don't suggest that you start with a turkey or a duck or a goose. Once again, they're much more than what you need to be handling. Not saying you can't, but do yourself a favor and go with a Bantam. Jennifer?
Okay. Yep. Good morning, everybody. So just to start out, let you know, showmanship starts long before you ever walk into the show ring to do your competition. It starts months and months ahead of time. It's practice, practice, practice. One of the first things we're going to do for today is to go over bathing and grooming for you. So there's a whole array of supplies and things that you guys can use for bathing and grooming. You can have them in different containers. We started out with an old toolbox that we had our supplies and stuff in that we would carry around, with trays that come out, whatever. Our son Raymond was nice enough to win showmanship, so we got this nice tote so we can keep stuff in the tote. At one point I carried it in a bucket, little boxes, whatever you've got. But there's some basic stuff that you're gonna need. You're gonna need some type of shampoo or something to wash with. You can use, do you want something that's mild? Do you want like baby shampoo? I like to pamper them. I actually like to use Pantene. I like the way it makes my hair feel, so it makes their feathers feel nice too. Nice and smooth and slick. You're gonna need some brushes to be able to brush and clean their feet or clean some of their feathers. A sponge or something to help wipe them down. I like to have a cup that I can dip and pour water over them with. We also have, if you have white birds, there's bluing shampoo or special shampoos you can get to bathe white birds, but you have to be very careful with it. You can't leave it on too long. You can't put too much on, or you're going to end up with what?
She left it on my hair too long.
Blue
can you tell?
tinted birds, okay? Blue tinted birds, they won't be white. We do keep some either like Adam's flea and tick spray, or we get to the point where we mixed our own permethrin spray to help with the lice and mites and things like that. Nail clippers to be able to trim their beaks and their toenails. I like to keep a small emery board in with it. Once I trim their toenails or the beak, I like to take that emery board and sand them off just like you do your fingernails so you don't end up with flat or sharp edges. Some Q-tips that you can use to put oil on their beaks and wattles. I just use my fingers, but you know, whatever. So we're going to walk you through the process of what we do to bathe and groom a bird to get it ready for show. Like Joe said, this is not what you want to do the night before you have to check in. This is what you do at least 3 to 5 days ahead of time. You're going to be very careful as you're washing it not to ruffle their feathers and things like that, but they're going to get wet. They're going to get soaking wet. Birds' feathers aren't normally like that. Normally they'll repel the water, but when you're putting them in a tub of water, they're going to get fully soaked. So it's going to take them a while to dry. You got to keep them in a warm, dry place, away from cool breezes and things like that till they dry. And then it's going to take them several days to go back and preen. They'll take their beak, get oil off their uropogeial gland at the back of their tail, and they'll re-preen their feathers so that by the time 3 to 5 days later you check them in, they're going to look really nice and they're going to be clean, okay? So we're going to walk through the process.
It also helps if you have 2 people.
Yeah, this is a bantam bird, so obviously it's a little bit easier, okay? So before you ever even put them in a tub of water, you want to kind of check their feathers, check for feather mites, things like that. You can tell because you'll see dust, what looks like dust and debris on the feathers and things. Back in their tail, the same thing. So you want to check them before you ever even put them in to know whether or not you have lice or something that you need to treat. We can do that after we wash it, and we'll show you how. Obviously, I have the luxury at home that we have a large stainless steel outside tub that has 2 sinks in it with a spigot. I can wash and rinse in those 2 tubs with fresh water coming in. I don't need to do them in containers. If you don't have that luxury, you can use containers or even buckets. You just have to be careful that when you put the bird down in the water, you're not putting them in obviously where their head goes under. You don't ever want their head to go underwater, okay? So in this case, I'm going to put him down in this bucket, and I'm just going to dip water up over the top of him to get him wet. You can even dip them sideways, kind of get their feathers good and wet, and then we're just going to start to put a little bit of shampoo on them and start to work it in.
When you put the shampoo on them, what it does, it strips that oil off those feathers, which then makes the feathers
Not out of that one.
absorb more of the water.
Back up.
Here.
Yeah, I can't push it. I have to push. I like to use it and put it on a sponge because that way you can, so what you can do is you can take and you can start to spread that shampoo out on their feathers and spots. Okay, you want to make sure you get up underneath their tail. You want to make sure you get up underneath their wings. And you want to make sure you get their body. We may need, I don't know, we may need a little more Joe, I don't know, we'll see. And then I just kind of, it might be all right. I'm just going to start to rub it in. Notice I'm not rubbing this way, right? Their feathers go that way. The grain of their feathers goes that way. That's the way you need to brush them or wipe them with your hand. Because if you brush them this way, the feathers, Joe, put your fingers together like that for me. So your feathers are hooked together by little hooks called barbules. That's what makes the flat part of the feather stick together. So it'll come apart if you rub them the wrong way, and eventually you can rub them the other way and they'll preen themselves, that they'll go back in together. But it just takes a while for them to do that if you were to get a bunch of their feathers done that way. So you don't want to do that. You want to try to go in the direction of the feathers. Try not to get soap and stuff in their eyes. That's why you want to use a gentle shampoo, like a baby shampoo or something like that. And you just kind of want to clean them off, get them good and soaped up. If they have dirty feet, these don't because they're on a wire cage, but you can take a brush, a soft brush or a toothbrush, and you can clean their feet. Make sure you clean the bottoms of their feet.
And their toenails.
and look at their toenails. We're going to trim off some of the toenails on this one, but yes, so you can check for dirt and things in their toenails. Make sure their legs and things are good and clean so you don't have any dried poo or anything like that on them, okay? If they happen to have anything on their combs, you can clean that off too. You just don't want to dip them in the water, okay? So I'm going to do his first rinse, okay? I'm going to put him back in the water that I soaked him up in. And I'm going to rinse him off. Like I say, I usually like to have a cup or something that I can just dip water up over him to kind of get the worst of the soap off. Okay, looks pretty good. You can kind of run your hand back over him to get a little bit of it out. Then our next tub is the first rinse tub. It's just plain clear water, okay? Same thing, we're going to put him down in it. We're going to splash some more water up over him to try to get the soap out. Because if you leave soap on them, it's going to leave a film or a residue on your feathers, okay? And you don't want to have that. So we've rinsed him that way. And then typically your third tub is the final rinse, okay? So what you can do is, again, it's clear, plain water, and you can put a little bit of vinegar in it. I didn't put it in today because I didn't bring it with me, but if you put a little bit of vinegar in it, what it does is that vinegar helps to cut whatever soap may be left on those feathers as you rinse them again one last time. And he's pretty wet. His feathers are soaked down to the skin. So we're going to try to squeeze a little bit of water out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wrap him up. My son Raymond used to call it his bird burrito. Actually, go the other way, Joe. Do it long ways. Fold it in half the other way.
Oh.
If you have a Bantam bird, don't use mom's good towels from the bathroom either, okay? And don't use your brother's toothbrush out of the bathroom, okay? Pick something that you do specifically for poultry. We're going to wrap them up like this with their legs down and out. My son Raymond used to call this his bird burrito, okay? So you don't want to wrap them too tight. They still have to breathe, okay? So, and then we would take and just basically set this bird out on a table and let it dry. Let's go ahead and get rid of these because we're done. Okay, we can put it over here. And that towel is going to help absorb all of the water out of his feathers. Not all of it, but it's going to help absorb a lot of the worst of it out of his feathers, okay? Got it? And we would typically set him on the table and let him dry, and we would move on to the next bird. We might do 3, 4, 5, 6 at a time, whatever, and have them all wrapped up ready to go. Because by the time you're done the next ones, this one's going to be fairly well dry that you can start to do other stuff to it. The nice thing about them in here is they're not going to get away from you. They're not going anywhere, right? Okay, it's wrapped up, but it's not hurting the bird. So we can see the beak. This particular bird, his beak, if you could see it, if you look at your fingernails, do you see where you have the clear part of your fingernail and then it starts to turn pink? Okay, where you cut off the clear part, you never cut back to the pink. That's what his beak looks like. So his top beak has grown out over the top of his bottom. So we're going to trim that off, okay? And it's really easy to do. Okay, you can take a pair of nail clippers and just like you would clip your nails, you have to watch that pink fleshy part, okay? We're going to trim it off straight across. And then I like to go back on the sides and trim just the points on the side. And then I take my trusty nail file, and just like you would file your fingernails, we take and file down the edge of that beak so that now it matches up with the bottom beak, okay? And there's no sharp edges or anything for him to catch or snag on, okay? And he's not going to hurt you or the judge while you're handling him. Then we start to look at the other end. Somewhere in here he has feet.
Little bird.
Where'd they go? Okay, we might have to unwrap him to find
Hang on,
this.
and we can go with the small towel.
He looks sad, doesn't he?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you wash a bird too often?
Well, I mean, the more you wash it, the harsher it is on their feathers because you're washing the oil off their feathers.
So what would you suggest? Like how often would you wash a bird?
Don't wash them
3
unless
to
you,
5 days before the shows.
that's it.
One and only time.
That's it.
Fair enough. What if you want to practice?
I mean, you can do that. You can do that, but it's not something that's like you don't need to wash your bird every week.
Okay.
You know, you could do it a couple times a year to practice, whatever, but it's not something you have to do every week. Okay. So that we're gonna look at the same thing with toenails. Okay, those toenails are really too long. So if you were doing showmanship, most likely you're going to get scratched. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to trim the toenails the same way we did the beak. Same thing as your fingernails. You look for that pink part. You don't ever want to trim into that pink part. You can take it off in stages. You never want to cut too far back that you cut into the pink, that you make their toes bleed. If you do, it happens. But you need to make sure you have some blood stop powder or something like that to put on it to help make that blood coagulate and stop. And you can do kind of the same thing. You can just just a little bit of filing to take off the sharp edges of those nails. Doesn't have to be a whole lot, but it prevents you from getting scratched while you're holding the bird doing showmanship. Okay, this particular bird has some spurs to it that are pointy. Up to you, you can leave them on, you can take them off. When they're hard and dry, that spur can be pretty sharp. And if you're handling the bird, you've been spurred before or scratched with it, they can hurt, okay? But don't take them off 3 to 5 days before your show. It's gonna take several weeks for that to heal over and become a smaller stub again for the spur. So don't take them off right before you go to show. If you're going to do it like a month or more ahead of time. All right, buddy, where's your other foot? We're going to check the other one. So we're going to do the same thing with this one. And this just takes practice. But you'll get used to it. See, I already cut that one a little bit too close. Yep. Okay. So that's your basic bathing, okay? And part of your grooming. So the other thing that we do is we take some baby oil, and you can use Q-tips or whatever, little makeup sponges, whatever. I just use my fingers. And you're just going to do a little bit. Okay, and you want to take anywhere they have open skin, like on their shanks and their feet, you just want to put a little bit of baby oil, even on their spurs, okay? Same thing on the other side. And what this does is it helps that skin look polished and clean and shiny, and it doesn't look dry, and how your skin looks nasty when it's all dry, right? You need to put lotion on. And then we're going to put some on the comb and wattles. This is where you need to be careful that you don't get it in their eyes. That's why I kind of like using my fingers, because you can direct where it's going better than I think you could with a Q-tip. And don't forget their beak.
And when you put that baby oil on the wattles and comb, it brings the redness out.
Yes.
It makes it look like she's really healthy.
Okay, so you just want a little bit. You want to brighten and shine them up. You don't want them to drip, okay? Don't want them to drip. All right, so that bird's pretty much done being groomed now. So once it dries a little bit, we can put it back out in the cage and let it finish drying its feathers and stuff on its own. And then once you check in the bird to show, like within 2 hours before the birds get judged, you need to go back in while they're in their cage. You're going to take some baby wipes if you need to, clean off any dry poop on their shanks or their feet. And then you can go back through and put another coating of baby oil on their shanks, their feet, their combs, their wattles. And then one of the last things that we do, obviously we don't do it to a wet bird, you do it to a dry bird, but you can take a silk cloth. This is just like the sleeve from an old silk shirt, okay? You can find a scrap somewhere, go to Goodwill, buy an old silk shirt, whatever, okay? And what we do is we spray like a show sheen I don't have mine with me because I think I loaned it to somebody at the last show we went to and it didn't get given back. So, but you can find, it's like they would use for horses. Comes in a spray bottle or a squirt bottle. Don't spray it directly on the bird. Spray it on your cloth, okay? That way you can control how much of it goes where. Because you don't want the bird to be soaking wet. You're just trying to put a nice sheen, a brightness to their feathers. So what we would do is we would do the same thing. Put your spray on here. You're going to rub down the feathers of the bird like this, out across the wing. Make sure you do both sides, just on the top. You don't need to go underneath. Nobody's going to see the underneath, right? Same thing for their tail feathers, okay? And don't forget to do the feathers on their chest or their breast, okay? And you can get them all nice and slick, and you'll see, once you're done, you'll see that nice slick sheen on their feathers. Again, you don't want it to be wet. You just want a little bit of it on it to shine it up, okay? And then you put them back in their cage head first, and that bird's ready for the judge to be judged and shown, okay? All right, that's basic bathing and grooming and prepping for show, okay? So we can start to work on some skills for actual showmanship itself, okay? Let me get some of this. Anybody have any questions on the bathing or grooming? Nope.
Doesn't start at the show. It starts months beforehand. The more you handle your bird, the gentler they get, the more accustomed they get to being handled. You know, it's nothing different than a puppy dog or a kitten. You know, if you don't ever mess with them, they're not, when you do go, they're liable to claw you or hiss at you.
Speak up louder so that people over here
I'm
can
sorry.
hear you.
Once again, showmanship does not start when you go to the fair. It starts months beforehand when you handle that bird some. Handle them often, and they become accustomed to you, and you become accustomed to them. All right.
The packets that you guys were all given, okay? This has a lot of poultry information in for general knowledge stuff. We're not going to go through all this stuff today page by page because we don't have time. But this is just kind of a starter packet. It was put together by Miss Cindy Kennard. If you guys know Miss Cindy, I'm sure a lot of you probably do. She's the superintendent over at the Florida State Fair for the youth show, and she does judging and stuff at a lot of other shows around Central Florida. But there's a lot of information here. This is like a study guide, okay? One of the things that we did with our son when he was coming up through doing showmanship was a lot of just general terminology and stuff for poultry. We'd put on index cards, put a question on the front, what is a rye tail? Flip it over on the back, write the answer on the back. As we were traveling to shows and things like that, he could pull out those flashcards and he could quiz himself. Okay, you can do it with somebody else, but he could pull them out and just look at questions himself. If nothing else, if you didn't remember the answer, at least that question was in your head. And once you flip the card to see the answer, it's stuck in your head. So that if you got asked during that show you were going to, at least it's somewhere in there fresh in your memory to try to pull it back out. But a big part of it is just general knowledge stuff. And that's just, like I said, that's kind of like on you guys to know what to do, okay?
Right. You were given a second package.
Yep.
And that package is a presentation that I actually developed for Brevard County. And Chris DeCubulis, Dr. Chris DeCubulis had made a very similar one, and I adapted his. There's some things that we added to it, and some things we deleted from it. But for the most part, it's the same. There's a lot of links on that, and those links, one of them is to a video that was made on showmanship, and it used a 4-H'er that was over on the West Coast, and he goes through and he demonstrates how to do showmanship. Don't just listen to what I say today. Go and look at that video and practice it, because it's going to give you a format to go through. Now, will every showmanship contest use that? The answer is no, they don't. That is the accepted procedure for poultry showmanship according to the YAPA. So the important thing is that you present yourself. What? You know, be dressed appropriately. When you walk up with your bird, have the bird held properly. Look at the judge. Keep eye contact with the judge. Don't go like this. You know, eye contact with the judge. Make that judge believe that you're talking to that person, to that individual. Then you introduce yourself. I'm Joe Blow, and I'm in 4-H, or if you're an FFA, I'm an FFA. I belong to such and such a club or chapter. I present to you today this bird, and in this case, it's going to be a bantam buff Brahma male. That describes this bird. That's the bird that you're showing them. Some of the characteristics that the buff Brahmas are known for are such and such and such. This bird has a rose comb. And then as you're...
There's a pea comb.
Or pea comb, excuse me.
Here, I'm going to hand it to you the right way.
Oh. See? She's learned something. She learned to teach her husband.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Got it?
All right, you see what we've done here for transfer. I took and put my hand over the top of the bird as she removed her top hand, and I put 2 or 3 fingers between its legs, took my outside fingers and caught the wings, the tips of the wings, and that bird, you can do anything with it. You know, he don't get excited because he feels secure. It's like putting a baby in a papoose. And so once you do that, you talk about the particular breed and variety. And then you go through that bird. You notice I'm always grooming the bird by laying the feathers down, always going with the lay of the feathers. And the more you do that, the more the color comes out in that bird. That's one of the reasons you use the show sheen, is it helps bring that color out. The show sheen on the feathers and the baby oil on the wattles and the comb, as well as the beak and the legs. Then you'll start out at the head. You talk about, I'm looking at both eyes, and you want this bird to be able, Jen, get over here as the judge, as the showmanship judge, please. You want you're presenting this bird to the showmanship judge. Now you notice that she stood about 2.5 feet from me. You don't want to be like this, nor do you want to be over here somewhere. You want to be a couple of feet from the judge. You want the judge to be able to see what you're talking about when you talk this bird. You're going to go from beak to tail to toes. Beak to tail to toes, and describe what you're looking at, what the judge would be looking at if they were judging this bird. Okay? So, I'm going to look up here and say the comb is within standards. The eyes are equal, they're bright, they're round, no defects there. Then you're going to go down and say, all right, this bird, even though it's a bantam, is supposed to be fairly wide-bodied. So I bring my hand down here and I show the judge, see how wide-bodied this bird is. That's the area between the shoulders. Mm-hmm. This is what we're talking about. Wide. We'll come down back and you get back to the tail, and you can talk about how well feathered plumage is on it. Now if you notice it right now, this bird does not have a lot of real long tail feathers, but he's not supposed to. And then you can you can open one wing up and say, oops, what's wrong with this bird? Well, this bird's in a molt. How do I know that? Because you see these main flight feathers? You can see that they're not grown in. They're missing feathers. Well, there's missing feathers. I don't know if you all can see this or not, but this is a new feather that's coming out. See the white part there? That's where that feather is just growing out. So for a show bird, that would kind of be distracting from the bird because he's not fully plumaged. You know, he's gone through a molt. You do one wing, then do the other. Do the same thing. Does he have the right number of feathers?
To go show the other side too.
Oh yeah.
The other side over here too. So it's when you're showing those parts of the wing, you can pull the wing out. It's important for you to know and be able to tell the judge and point to, okay, so this is the shoulder, this is the bow, this is the bar. These are the primary flight feathers, and they're covered by the primary coverts. Secondary flight feathers covered by the secondary coverts. The little axial feather in the center is what divides primaries and secondaries, okay? So the more information you know, and as you're examining that bird for the judge, you're basically looking at and describing to that showmanship judge what the judge in the showroom is looking at when he looks at your bird and judges it during the show. That's basically what you're doing for the showmanship judge, is you're the judge in the show ring, you're examining your bird as you would for show. And that judge is judging it to the standard for that breed. How many of you have heard of the standard of perfection? Yep, okay, so there's two poultry associations. There's the American Poultry Association. Their book of standards has large fowl and bantams, okay, combined. Then there's the American Bantam Association. They just have bantam birds in their standard, okay? Both of these books are like your ultimate Bible, okay? You can open it up and you will see, he's looking at a Brahma right now. So under the Asiatic class for large fowl, this is obviously not a large fowl, this is a bantam, it being the feather leg class, but you can look it up by class, you can pull it up by the breed, and it will tell you all the characteristics for that breed of bird. How much it should weigh, what size it should be, what kind of comb it should have. And under the different varieties, it will tell you the different color patterns and what those different varieties should look like. They'll give you a brief history of where these breeds originated from. Like the Brahmas came from China, okay, came over here, and they were light Brahmas and dark Brahmas to start with. And then later on, they developed the buff Brahmas here in America, okay? But these books are your Bible and your learning source for your particular breed. It's important when you're doing showmanship that you know as much about that breed and variety of your bird as possible, okay? You can buy these books online. This one right now I don't think you can, because the American Poultry Association just did a revision of their book, and they found lots of errors and had lots of political adult issues going on with that book. So I think they stopped it, and they're going back to do another revision. So I don't even think you can buy this one online, not the most recent one. You can buy an older one, probably Amazon, wherever. But, you know, they every maybe 10 years or so, they update them. This one's from 2010. I haven't bought a new one since then. But you can get the same information, though, directly from their website. You don't have to have the entire book. You can pull up the American Poultry Association website or the American Bantam Association website, go down their breed list, and you can pull up those characteristics and information from those sites and print it off yourself if that's the only thing you want for that particular breed. You don't have to have the whole book, okay?
Did you cover the Bantam one too?
I did, yes. So the Bantam standard is basically the same thing. Sometimes they'll have colored pictures of the different breeds in there, but each one of these two will also have written descriptions of what each one of those breeds and varieties should look like. That's what you need to look at when you're picking out your birds to take to show, okay?
All right, now somebody asked earlier if we were going to cover turkeys at all. And there's very few people that are going to show a turkey. Why? Because like showing a goose, it's too heavy. too heavy. Now, the proper way to show a turkey or a goose is you lead them you herd them into the show ring. You don't pick them up and carry them. So that takes a lot of practice. The other thing that you need to know about turkeys in particular, and in one of the packets that I gave you, it actually goes over this, that you don't want to touch the feathers on the turkey when they get excited. Because the turkeys have the ability to let loose of their feathers when excited. It's a trait that comes from the wild that the turkey had developed that allows them to cut their feathers loose so that the predator grabs a hold of something, it gets a mouthful of feathers and no turkey. So, and that's mentioned in one of the handouts that we gave you. Other than that, there's no real big difference, except for one. With a turkey, and somebody mentioned that they were told that you had to turn the turkey over. Well, no, you don't turn the turkey over. What you do is you take the turkey, and if you put it on the table, or if you do it on the ground, you put it on the table, and you put your hand over the back, and you push it down. Excuse me, you grab a hold of the two legs, and you pull it out, and take the other hand and push it down, so that the turkey is sitting on its breast, on the table. Turn it over. And once again, you don't want to grab a hold of a handful of feathers because it cuts it loose.
If any of you go watch the video that's in that link on the young man that's doing showmanship, he does a part in there where you go through and you're talking about the whole part of the bird's body, okay? And then he says when you get down to being able to examine the legs, he says you take the bird, you can put it on your leg and turn it upside down to look at the legs. Well, he doesn't necessarily like that, okay? So I think it's just as easy to take that bird and put it against your body like you would normally hold it, but then just kind of turn it up a little bit sideways. He's still secure against your body. You can still see his legs. You can still pull a leg out and say, okay, he's got nice straight shanks. There's no problems. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got the correct number of toes. He has the correct number of toenails. And in this particular bird, he is supposed to have feathered shanks, and they are feathered all the way out to the edge of the toes where they're supposed to be. So you can do that without turning that bird upside down on your leg. It's not a position they like. It's up to you if you can control the bird that way, but I don't think you have to. The important thing is that as you're talking through the bird, you're not just, if a judge says, okay, examine your bird for me, you don't just go, yeah, he's good, okay, no. The judge wants to know that you know what you're looking for when you're looking at those various parts, okay? So talk to them while you're doing it. That's what they want to know. They want you to talk to them and walk them through it. You could see a couple of different kinds of showmanship. You could see, again, where you walk in and the judge says, tell me what you got, show me what you got. And that's all they're going to say. And they expect you to take the next 2 to 3 minutes and do the rest to do that examination of that bird like a judge would in the showroom floor. You might go in where you may have to sit down first and take a partial written test on some general poultry knowledge. And then you'll go into the show ring and you'll do some hands-on handling with the judge, and that's what they're evaluating. That may be your showmanship. That may be all you see in front of the judge is in and out of the cage, how do you handle it, pass it back and forth. They may ask you a couple of questions, but you may do a written portion for that. Or you may see showmanship where you walk into the ring, and yes, you have to do some handling where it's in and out of the cage. Maybe pass it back and forth to the judge. Sometimes they don't even do that. They just want you to put it in and out of the cage. And then they're going to ask you verbal questions, general knowledge on poultry. That's where all that studying of those packets and general information comes in. We can't teach you that. It's just stuff you have to study and know. And it comes with time. The more you do it, the more you study it, the more you're going to remember, the better you're going to be at it, okay?
And most of all that stuff is in those 2 packets we handed out.
Is in those 2 packets, yep. Or you can look stuff up online. The Standards of Perfection have a whole glossary of terms and stuff in too that will help you as a study guide if you want those. But those packets have pretty much general information in.
Don't forget that when you're examining this bird, Did you let the judge know that you're examining for signs of external parasites?
Yes. Yes, and that's when you examine your wings. So that's where you can look and you'll see, you can check the wings. No parasites, you can check in the hackle feathers. No parasites, you can check in, beards or muffs if you have ones. You can check in the tail and the saddle feathers, things like that. But I'll let them know that that's what you're looking for, okay? As far as handling goes, so you see I don't put 2 fingers in between, but I put like my index finger in between his legs, and then I kind of hold and grip those legs with my other fingers, okay? That's a secure way to hold him because he can't go anywhere. I've got his legs. He cannot go anywhere unless I leave go, okay? It's best not to hold them upside down because if they got any food or water in their crop, guess what? They're going to spit it back up over you or the judge, okay? But you can hold them that way, and I kind of have my thumb on this wing and my little finger over here on this wing, so he can't even flap his wings, okay? For some of you that are smaller, it's harder to do that. Your hands aren't that big, right? But that's why we suggest that you guys have little small birds, bantam birds, so that you have that ability to do that. If your hands aren't that big and you can't get those wings, guess where this hand goes? Gently over his back. Okay, I can leave go of his wings there, but I've got him. He's not going to go anywhere, okay? Normal carrying position is like that and up against your body, okay? Like this, all right? Other thing you could do is sometimes if they're flighty, you can take and turn them this way a little bit and put their head between your body and your arm. Kind of gives them a little bit of a darker spot. He's already stopped shaking. He was shaking out here. See, now he's shaking, and then he stopped. I don't know what it is, but it's just, it's a darker spot, and they're more secure. That's an acceptable way to carry them too. So if you need to pass the bird back to the judge, okay, this is what you need to do, okay? So bring him around front. Your spare hand, yes?
With the person that you're going to give it to keeps the eyes on the chicken, grabs it the way it's supposed to, and then when they're done, they look at you.
Yes, but they don't just grab it. She said, so the person you're handing it to just kind of, when they're ready, they grab the bird, and then when they have it and they're ready, they just kind of look at you. That's true, but you have to be able to hand it to them in the proper way. So if I came up to you and I went like this and said, here you go, here's my bird, what are you going to do? You going to take that bird from me that way? No, because it's not what? It's not proper because it's not head first. Anytime you pass the bird to somebody else, you always do it head first. Bird goes in the cage head first, comes out of the cage head first, okay? So this is what we're going to do. I put it against my body, my free hand goes on this side. I secure it against my body so this hand can come free. But the bird can't go anywhere because I've got him, right? Then this hand goes down this side, and I've got him. Wings, legs, everything, all secure. Okay, and then I'm going to pass him to the person, hand underneath.
Okay.
I have to teach the old dog new tricks sometimes, okay? He's going to look at me and acknowledge that he's got that bird before I ever leave go. I can't tell you how many times I've done showmanship where a kid's handing me the bird, and I barely get my hands on it, and they're gone. Okay, and the bird's like, okay, I'm squeezing. I'm like, okay, don't leave go. So don't leave go until the person taking it acknowledges that they've got your bird, okay? So I'm going to take it back. See, he's turning it, rolling it around. I'm going to put my hand underneath, make sure I've got the legs, hand on top. I'm going to acknowledge that I've got the bird. Yep, what? Oh. I'm like, what? Okay, so we're going to put the bird in the cage. We're going to do the similar type of thing as we put the bird in the cage, okay? I've got one hand free that I need to open the cage door with. And you guys need to make sure you practice this. If you have a bantam bird and they go in that type of coop where the door slides up, guess what? When you get into showmanship, you're not going to see that type of cage. You're going to see this. Now this one's different because we have wire around it because we use it as a brooder cage. But it's the same type of cage that you're going to see when you go into showmanship. Know how that door opens. Go practice on one of the showroom floors somewhere, okay? So it has a little loop that goes over this bar that holds this door shut. All you have to do is pinch. Some of them are tight, some of them are hard. You need to practice. But I'm going to take 2 fingers and I'm going to pinch and that door will pop open. Okay? So I'm going to do the same thing when I put that bird inside. One hand here, this hand's free, one hand here. Bird goes in, head first, not sideways, head first. I guarantee you if that bird goes in and turns its head, you're going to lose points on showmanship, okay? Inside, head first. Set the bird down. Pose it right away, pose it. So if Joe's the judge, okay, and I put my bird in here, that judge wants to see a profile or side view of this bird. So not butt into the judge, but head end and sideways to the judge. So I'm going to try. He's not one we've used before, so he doesn't really do too well.
This is why you practice ahead of time.
This is why you practice, okay? In theory, what they should do is, if you've practiced with them and worked with them, they'll stand there. And the point is for you to be able to make them stand up, tail in the right position, head in the right position, just as you would see them in the standard of perfection. But sideways view to the judge. That's what they want to see. They're looking for type. Do you know what type is? No? One of those pages in your packet has silhouette pictures of birds where you can see their back and their head shape. That's their type. Their shape is their type. If you look at that packet, you'll see that each different type of breed has a different type. They have a different shape. That's one of the things that the judge is looking for when they look at that profile for showmanship. They're looking at the type of that bird to see how well it matches the type for that breed, okay? Always, always, always close and latch the cage door behind you, always. Unless that judge specifically tells you to leave it open, which they will never do, shouldn't, don't ever leave that door open. Close it, latch it, because you don't want your bird loose, okay? The judge may ask you some questions, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. And then the judge will say, okay, you can get your bird out of your cage. So again, you come up.
Hang on. Let's tell them why you closed the gate.
Oh, yeah.
You see this hook? Take a 5 or 6 year old.
Where's it at? It's eye level. Okay.
You only get one set of eyes.
Yep.
And if they poke that in their eye, they could lose an eye. So it's a safety, safety, safety.
Yep.
Do close it.
Okay, so judges told me, okay, please take your bird out of the cage. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to reach both hands into the cage, and if you're small, I don't care if you stick your whole head in there. Whatever you got to do, okay? I'm going to reach in, and I'm going to get my hands on the bird, and I'm going to turn him so that he is sideways. And you can do it where you put your hand underneath, just like you would carry him, hand on top. He comes out head first. Not sideways, but he comes out head first, okay? And then you close the cage door behind you once again, okay? That's the points and things that you're going to look for handling, is how you hold the bird and how you get it in and out of the cage, okay? So make sure you got a good grip on your bird, because if you drop it and lose it during showmanship, you're going to lose points for handling, okay? Up against your body, and you've got him where he's secure, okay?
Pretty much it.
What else? I mean, that's the gist of showmanship. A lot of it is, once you get the handling portion down and you're comfortable handling your bird and passing it back and forth to somebody, the rest of it is general knowledge and following directions. Do whatever the judge tells you, because you're not going to know until you walk into the showmanship ring what you're going to be asked to do for showmanship. There's nothing in the rules to any show that's ever going to say, we're going to use ABC or XYZ brand of showmanship. Like, show up. If you're lucky enough to not be the first one in the show ring for showmanship, then guess what? You have an idea what's going to happen if you watch the people ahead of you. Okay? That's all there is to it.
There's one more thing. I told you to look sharp. Your dress, your identification, 4-H, FFA, whatever. But also you have to wear one other thing. You need to wear a smile. You knew what I was going to say, didn't you?
Yep.
You need to wear that smile. You need to convince the judge that you're having fun.
Yep.
You don't sit there and,
Yep.
you know, we're all in this together. Smile. Show you're having fun.
And if you don't know something,
Just tell them you don't know.
the judge is going to give you a little bit of time to stand there and stew and think about it, okay? But if you truly don't know the answer, just say, I really don't know the answer to that question right now, but I'm going to look it up when I get home. that impresses a judge that you're at least going to try to find out what you didn't know, okay? You know, don't stand there with your hands in your pockets like this. You know, don't lean up against the table. You know, just stand straight up, you know, hands at your side if you're not holding your bird. Yeah, we even had kids that like crawled under the table during showmanship, you know, so it's crazy. We talked about using like ducks and turkeys and things like that. Is it possible? Yeah. Is it fun for the judge? No. Okay. We had a kid in Orlando, one of the kids from one of our clubs actually, that did a turkey. But he worked with that turkey for months ahead of time, and he basically walked it all the way from his cage into the arena, in front of the cage with basically like a stick, like you would use like for a pig or something like that, okay?
Pointer, yeah.
And he did perfectly fine because he'd worked with that turkey and trained it, okay? Stood it there because we already had a cage on the table and we couldn't put the turkey up on the table to do it. So we basically asked him questions and stuff while he was there and the turkey was on the ground, but he still had to maintain the area that that turkey stayed in the whole time he was answering questions and doing stuff for showmanship, and he did great. You know, it just depends on how much effort you want to put into it to do it and do it right. My son, I would never let him use, he had heavy ducks. He had ruins and apple yards. He loved the ducks. I would never let him use a duck for showmanship. No, it's too hard, you can't control it, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, he got to go to a show with his dad one time that I couldn't go, and he used his duck. And then there was no going back.
But he won showmanship.
But he won showmanship. But then he worked with a duck, and he got used to what to do. Ducks are a little different too, okay? Ducks, I mean, these are heavy ducks. This thing probably weighs 15, 20 pounds, okay? But he's a big kid. But with the ducks, you know, they got that big long neck, right? So what you can do is you can like hold on, when you're holding them, you can hold on to the neck to control their head. They like to actually take their beak and their head and stick it under your arm. You know, kind of like nibble at your armpit. They don't hurt you, it's just what they do. They feel secure there. But that's one of the ways that you can handle and control the ducks is by holding their neck. Obviously, you don't want to squeeze it too tight, right? It's just a gentle, you know, grip on their neck to be able to help hold them. Geese and stuff like that, man, I wouldn't recommend because they're just mean, okay? Just saying. They're the first ones to nip at you or do stuff like that. So if you don't absolutely have to, I wouldn't use a goose or anything like that for showmanship. Ducks are okay, but you really got to work with them and try to handle them. Call ducks and stuff like that, man, you really got to be careful, okay? Because you leave that thing go and it's gone, gone, okay? They have that wild instinct and they're small and flighty and they're gone. So make sure you can control them if you're going to use a call duck or something like that, okay? All right? What else?
Bring them up to practice.
Yeah.
All right, anybody would like to come up and practice?
You brought birds, right?
Seven birds.
So we're going to let you use her birds. You guys can come up and kind of line up. Maybe we'll do like just
I mean,
this.
you want to talk